All right, the East-West Shrine game practices, they're officially in the books. It's time to move on to game day, baby. And that goes down Thursday night on NFL Network. So we're going to bring in Zach Wolchuk of Lights Out Sports TV, who, Zach, you hosted the live streams. You were there. You saw anything and all things East-West Shrine game, man, in terms of practices. Thanks for hopping on with us, man. How you feeling?
Man, I appreciate it. I think those guys are ready to get that game going. I think after 4 days of practice, when you're going up against your teammates, you can't really full on hit. They're ready to get some pads popping. We had some scraps with some receivers and DBs going on in practice yesterday, so I know these guys are fired up and ready for Thursday night.
You speaking my language when you talk receivers versus DBs. I like to call
As
it lions versus hyenas. You know, it's like that battle of who's going to be the king of the jungle. But
yeah,
before we even talking about the receivers and DBs, a lot of Giants fans are eyeing Syracuse quarterback Kyle McCord. I've seen reports that my man was balling out at the practices, and people are even saying that he's having or was having the best practices out of everybody out there. How's he looked, in your opinion, and do you think that his draft stock will go up after the practices and the game on Thursday?
Yes, I absolutely do. I think he was the best quarterback there at the Shrine Bowl for me. And Kyle McCord was a guy, look, if you know his background, obviously at Ohio State, transferred to Syracuse. I wasn't really expecting to go to practice and love what I saw from Kyle McCord, but I was absolutely blown away with the velocity, the accuracy, especially when they're doing situational red zone work. Kyle McCord was spot on and pinpoint with everything that was going on, and that's a tough deal there. I mean, he's working with a couple of teammates there from Syracuse, but for the most part, you're working with a lot of new receivers like Ja'Cory Brooks, Keandre Lambert-Smith out of Auburn, guys he hasn't really been able to throw to, but that wasn't an issue. You could see the mobility getting out of the pocket, the play action game, but really it was the accuracy and the quick decision making, the ability to process that really stood out to me when it comes to Kyle McCord. So from a draft prospect list, I mean, you're looking at the top guys, Shiloh Sanders, Cam Ward. Who's in that next wave? Is it Jackson Dart? Is it Jalen Milroe? I think you're now going to start to talk about Kyle McCord elevating himself into maybe even a day two conversation.
Yeah, and Syracuse fans, they're obviously watching him this year. A lot of them have been like, I told you, Brandon. There's a
Yeah.
reason why he led FBS in passing and was able to have, 34 touchdowns and to turn that Syracuse program around in 1 year with Fran Brown being there. So a lot of people are like, man, we've been known about McCord, and now he's just kind of making some national spotlight. Luckily, to play in a game or have practices at a bowl like East West Shrine, that's going to put you on the map. Who else kind of stood out from the quarterback position? Because a lot of people are saying that this draft class isn't what it was last year in terms of depth at the quarterback position.
No, it's not. But one guy that I really did like was Cam Miller, North Dakota State quarterback, 6'1", 212, second team AP FCS All-American, won another national championship there. He's got overall the measurables kind of where you want, but it's the rushing ability as well. This is a guy who, when you look at rushing touchdowns, you go back to 2022, he led the team with 15 rushing touchdowns there for North Dakota State. Last year was able to sprinkle in, I believe, 5 more rushing touchdowns. So all in all, this is a guy who kind of has the dual threat ability, but also in that tight red zone, one-on-ones, receivers, DBs working with each other, the 7-on-7 drills. I was always really, really impressed with Cam Miller in some of these, and he was working behind Kyle McCord. So they're actually going to be on the same roster. They'll both be on the East roster together. So you'll be able to see him probably come in as soon as Kyle McCord leaves. Number 7, Cam Miller, North Dakota State Bison, another quarterback to keep an eye on.
Definitely going to have to circle his name and keep an eye out for him. And I'm glad North Dakota State's leaving FCS pretty soon because, I mean, they're like
Yes.
DJ Khaled when it comes to championships. Another one, year in, year out. Are there any other positions, anyone else that really stood out and made a name for themselves throughout the week that we should keep an eye on come Thursday night?
Brady Cook, another quarterback. He's going to be a quarterback from the West team right behind Max Brosmer of Minnesota. But Brady Cook out of Mizzou also will be another quarterback. He's right there with Kyle McCord. I think just a tier down, but he's also going to be fighting. 2 years ago, I mean, Mizzou beats Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. He looked really good, dealt with some injuries last year. But a wide receiver to know, San Jose State's Nick Nash was an absolute stud. Now, he won the Triple Crown in FCS this year, much like Jamar Chase did at the NFL level, leader in catches, touchdowns, and receptions. Nick Nash, just fluid. I mean, he's a guy that's also about 6'2", got good size, but natural hands, and everything he did, he just looked smooth. All the team drills, the individual drills, he looked really, really good. So a wide receiver, I'd keep an eye on him. Defensive back on the East team, Kobe Bryant, spelled Cobee. Kobe Bryant might be the best defensive back on that East team, plays corner, another guy, a lot of swag. Actually sat out of practice yesterday. He's like, I've already crushed it the first 3 days. I'm just going to sit out, do some coaching. We had him mic'd up on Lights Out Sports, and he was loving some of that lion versus hyena work, as you were talking about. When his hyenas, the DB stepped up and made a play, Kobe Bryant was letting you know about it, but his tape speaks for himself. I was really excited about him. And there's some really good trench players. Issa Pohl, number 76, Washington State tackle, left tackle in college. They had him working on the right side. If you're looking for a guy maybe on day 2 at the offensive tackle spot, he was really, really impressive. And defensive tackle Jordan Phillips out of Maryland, every single day, he was probably the best defensive lineman there out at practice.
Yeah, I saw a lot of tweets about Jordan Phillips out of Maryland, East West Shrine. Whoever runs that profile, that account on X, did a great job of kind of taking us, the viewer, and keeping us updated of everything that was going on. But to go back to Kobe Bryant, you said he balled out the first couple of days and then he kind of shut it down. How's that looked at or perceived by the scouts and personnel out there when a guy has some good days and then he kind of just shuts it down for whatever reason?
Yeah, you got to kind of weigh that, I guess, with your agents, right? That's where the agent comes in, and they're going to take over a lot of that conversation because in this, I mean, you're so picked and prodded when it comes to the NFL draft, and you're also going to have to go to the combine. But now, I mean, for him, when I think you solidify yourself as probably the top DB maybe on your team, let me focus more on meeting with teams. And he was still out there. I don't think it's a knock on him because he's out there at practice, and he's very, very involved. You could see the competitive nature for him. So I think it just kind of depends on the player. But for Kobe Bryant, I don't think there's a knock there at all. Whereas you saw a guy like a Rondé Gatson, who's actually the son of former Miami Dolphin receiver Rondé Gatson. He's a tight end. Also, I believe out of Syracuse, stud muffin. This dude was probably the best tight end there at the Shrine Bowl. East team, West team's got a lot of big bodies, but Gatson probably the best receiving tight end there. So I don't think overall it's a problem, but it's probably a case by case kind of deal. Once the team gets to talk to the player, what was the reason for that? But I think the competitive nature for Kobe Bryant, he probably would have gone out there without pads on and still practiced.
Mamba mentality. So on the flip side of it, who are some of the guys that kind of came in with a lot of hype and just hasn't really lived up to that hype just yet? Like, who needs to have a big game on Thursday so their stock doesn't fall?
I think number one in Coach Prime, don't come at me for this, but it's Shiloh. Yeah, Shiloh Sanders. I didn't see it. I really just wasn't overall impressed. Now, Shiloh's draft stock, this isn't a guy that I think scouts were looking at as anything beyond a day 3 pick, but you might be talking about undrafted territory with Shiloh Sanders. Just looked like he was out of position, wasn't really processing super well, in my opinion, what he was seeing in front of him, the hip fluidity, the back pedal. And that was stuff that I kind of expected for him to be a little bit better at. But I don't think he really showcased himself well in the practices. Maybe he is a gamer. Maybe he's just a guy, he's going to turn it on Thursday night and he's going to go out there and be absolutely awesome. There's a possibility of that. But Shiloh did not have himself a tremendous practice, at least for the 4 days that I was able to be there. And then otherwise, when you're looking at, let's go over to the West team. I think a guy that needs to have himself a good game would be Jaquindon Jackson, the running back from Arkansas. It's not like he didn't have good practices, but you've got a loaded running back class. I think Taj Brooks from Texas Tech, who's also going to be in this game, people know what he is, right? He's a guy that had 95% of the snaps there at Texas Tech, a three-down running back, not a burner, but he's super, super productive. Jaquindon Jackson could be one of these diamond finds here late in the draft, like Tyrone Tracy Jr. was for the New York Giants last year. He's a guy that was a former quarterback at Duncanville High School in the DFW area in Texas, went to UT as a quarterback, then transferred to Utah, switched to running back, then made his move over to Arkansas where he started last year. So he's only played the position for 3 years, but you see the talent there, and the body type is kind of what you want for the position. So a guy that I think can really help himself for the big game tomorrow night would be running back Jaquindon Jackson.
To go back to Shiloh, the Sanders family, we saw a video of Shiloh Sanders, who was there, didn't practice,
Yeah.
but all the hype was there. What was that like? And they saw a video of Brian Dable kind of high-five him. Any behind the scenes, anything you can fill us in when it comes to the Giants, Shiloh Sanders?
Well, I know the first day he met with the Titans. So he met with the Titans over there. But that's all Shador was doing, to your point. Didn't practice. But you always knew when the Sanders were walking around, because it's like a good posse of about 5, 6 different people. Dion was always super welcoming anytime he would walk by. He's awesome. But I do think that there is some very real talk there. Number 3 to the Giants. I think that makes a lot of sense for Shador. We'll see what happens with Cam Ward, right? I mean, the Titans, their GM's also flown some stuff out there. Maybe we're not going to move on from a generational talent. Could that be Abdul Carter? Could it be Travis Hunter, Shador's teammate? But there definitely were some meetings there with the New York Giants coach Dable, as you mentioned, and that might be one of those moves. I think absolutely badly needed to get a talent like Shador, who I do have as my quarterback 1. I think the cerebral nature in which he plays, the toughness is probably extremely underrated. There are times you'll watch Shador did not have the best protection. He is getting absolutely clobbered. He gets up and wants some more. The ability to extend plays, the touch. That's one thing that I think stands out of Shador, the touch that he plays with. But he carried himself exceptionally well, even if he didn't practice, just from being around and hearing him converse with some of the scouts and coaches. Shador's definitely a hell of an individual.
Zach, I roll with the entourage as well, but we're not 5 deep. It's just me and my 20-month-old kid. The game is Thursday night. So NFL Network. Who's going to be your early prediction for 2025 East-West Shrine Game MVP?
It's going to be Kyle McCord. I think the quarterbacks get this thing, and I think Kyle McCord's clearly the best quarterback here. I do think he's got a tremendous opportunity to go ahead and win MVP. That would probably be my guy. If it's not him, I mentioned Arondé Gatson. I think he's an absolute stud. They were thrown to the tight ends quite a bit. He's got a really good opportunity to step up and have himself a big game. But if I had to pick, I'm going to go with the quarterback, and Kyle McCord's the best of the bunch.
Zach, this was fun, man. Real quick, shout out your platform where people can find you.
Yeah, you can follow me at Zach Wolchuk, ZachWolchuk, on the Twitters. You can also find me on 105.3 The Fan on the Odyssey app, 2 to 7 p.m. Central Time here in Dallas. So love ya. Thank you so much for having me on, man. And talking draft, always fun.
All right, man. Got to get you back on soon, man.
Let's do it.